Good morning, vlog. This is Jeff. We are here in Manhattan. We're visiting MyTechCEO, a content creator who's gotten pretty viral for making funny venture capital startup content. Should be a lot of fun. Let's get after it. Good to see you in person.
How are you doing? By the way, I love how you were documenting everything. It's good. It's actually really smart. You're just even the moment you meet me, you're like, let's record that.
Yeah.
It's smart. I like it.
You're a fellow content creator, right?
Definitely.
I guess I've seen how some of the best do it, right? Once you're in content creating mode, it's take everything.
Totally.
If you just have the team that's set up, might as well just capture everything.
You also build up momentum, especially with my videos. If I shoot 2 videos back to back, I'm deep in the character.
Yeah.
I'm coming up with so many more content ideas as opposed to if I have to turn it on every day for a specific time. If you build off the momentum of I've shot 2 videos already, I want to shoot a third one, you're getting so much more done. And so
yeah, what is your workflow? To me it's basically I choose about 1 weekend or 1 week a month where I try to have the most interesting, most entertaining meetings and sets. Have Devin come along and just stack as much as possible.
Okay,
because
cool.
For me, being a content creator is just a hobby. It's just for fun. I've been inspired by Jake, seeing how some of the best content creators do it. It's okay,
yeah,
I want to understand that game. But my day job, entrepreneur, venture capital. I think that game, just as being a content creator, is one of the most competitive sports.
Yeah.
Capitalism is a very competitive sport. So you just got to focus.
Definitely.
So I'm curious, I feel just you kind of exploded on the scene, I would say, in the last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, you are more interesting than so many young VC associates in terms of your ability to get meetings, entertain people, get some message out, right?
Definitely.
I think when you're talking about the proverbial Harvard-Stanford kid, they might have an Ivy League nice degree, but do they actually get the people going?
Totally.
And I think a lot of startups is about, of course, having the capital, but getting attention. That's increasingly important. Yeah. So I'm curious how you play this game, because obviously you're self-aware about the character.
Yeah.
But I imagine there's a master plan in terms of not just doing this for fun.
I'll give you the rundown of how I think about it and how I'll tell you a bit about my story and then how I have come to where I am today and why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Because I think the character that I've built on social media, a lot of people will see that, but they don't understand the strategy behind it.
Yeah.
So my background is actually, I was a founder, started a couple of different startups, a few got VC funding, went down that route of trying to build something pre-seed. I felt like I was a decent founder, but I wasn't great. And I've always been surrounded by founders that are super, super good. And then eventually I started working with a company called Speechify. And I was working with Cliff, and they had a big recruiting problem. And so I started learning recruiting and understanding everything about recruiting. Eventually built out my own recruiting agency, worked with a handful of AI, Web3 startups on recruiting, scaled this agency. But then it was really focused on the recruiting side. I think at this point I'm about 21 years old. Everything is going great. I make a decent amount of money, but I feel I haven't been great. And then I start content. I started content with my brother. We first started this account called The European Kid, where we just started experimenting with different styles of content, and we landed in this French European kid, which when we do this character online, it just goes super viral.
Yeah. I didn't realize that you had a twin. I thought it was you had multiple personas, which probably interchanged, but
it would be pretty impressive if I could maintain the European Kid and also MyTechCEO. I think a lot of people do think that. Yeah. A lot of people were you're the European Kid and the MyTechCEO, but the truth is I have a identical twin brother who is a duplicate of me that is creating content as well.
And I'm friends with Stad Guy, and I feel you're taking some of those elements, but I appreciate that your content cadence is much faster, much quicker. And I think that's increasingly important, right? I would say that Stad Guy is probably the original Euro trash billionaire kid character. Definitely. But it's I like your speed of execution, right? You guys are just pumping out much more, which I think is so important.
Yeah, exactly. Stad Guy has done a really good job building a really strong brand. He has a very loyal following base. But I think the advantage that we had was our videos, what made them so successful was a style of content.
Yeah.
We identified a style of content that captures an audience differently than any other thing you could put out. Our style of content, to be specific, is filming in, have you seen The Office, right? Filming that realistic looking style from a faraway angle where it looks like someone is filming you discreetly without you knowing. And so the moment someone's scrolling on Instagram and comes across that content where they're wondering to themselves, is this French rich kid is he being serious? Because it's filmed in a way where it looks like it could be someone else from afar filming it. And I think that's what caught people's attention much more than any other content we could have put out about the character. And we just doubled down on
Interesting.
what
So
works.
it seemed like paparazzi and candid,
Yeah.
and it's like and just like, oh, this like brat is like running around, shit talking like club bouncers.
And like we're capturing it.
Yeah.
And that hooks people.
Yeah.
As opposed to me being in front of a camera and being a brat.
Right.
Because it's like there's that element of, is this real? And so that's why you'll see in the comments a lot of the comments now, less so because I think people understand the character. But in the past, it was like, is this guy for real? In that case, it also like meant that this was picked up by other people, like bigger influencers, also media channels. There's like a story I tell everyone. The craziest story about we've done so far was my brother did that video in front of a club in New York. I think he got like 40 million views on Instagram. It was like one of the most viral videos he did. In that video, he says a line like, "Do you know who you're messing with? The richest family in Europe." Like just randomly.
Yeah.
And this video started trending in France because there was French publications coming out asking the question of like, is this another son of Bernard Arnault, the richest person in France, in Europe? Literally, there was like tons of articles about this. Then I think Le Monde came out with an article about how it's like, no, it's not. It's actually this TikToker. And I don't know if he like found out Bernard Arnault and like paid someone to like cover that up. But it's crazy how like you can pick up a phone, you can find a style of content that does really well. You can shoot anything in a moment, and you can literally make the front headlines of France and have people questioning if there's another son of Bernard Arnault.
Yeah, and I think part of this generation of social media is that I think everyone is so used to the performative aspect of being in front of a camera and off of a camera, because I think there's always an element of cringe when you're trying too hard, right? Like you have cameras, or like you're like performing, doing a selfie. And I think that like having something that just seems spontaneous is interesting, right? There's like an effortlessness or sprezzatura of just being nonchalantly like performing, which I think is interesting. And I think it's also access to elite tier culture, billionaires, tech billionaires, or just like old school like fashion house billionaires. Before social media, people weren't just out there like, oh, this is what a yacht looks like. This is what, whatever, a 7-star hotel looks like.
Sure.
And now everyone is vicariously living it through their phone. And I think that's part of what I want to do with my blog, right? Like we get to have cool meetings, sit down with people like yourself, work with billionaires, work with celebrities, work with some of the smartest people in the world. It's like, okay, cool. Like everyone wants to see what happens in those rooms.
Definitely.
And give access to it. It's entertaining at the very least, and hopefully aspirational or educational.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's one of the key things that has made this account so successful. It's like tapping into that, like behind the scenes. People are so curious, like, what does an elite person's life look like? People are so curious even about my background. They're like, where are you coming from? You're on private jets all the time. I'll be honest, like a lot of our stuff, we just have a really good network. And like people really think that we're like some kind of like billionaire son. I'll just say we do have a really good network. So that helps us get a lot of access to the right, resources.
The right set pieces, right?
Exactly. The right things. But yeah, like when you like showcase something that people aren't used to seeing and understanding, people are so curious about it. And it's the same thing in your world, right? All the crazy people that you meet, people are curious to understand that better. So I think it's a really good point.
So much of it is just like being smart on maximizing set pieces, right? Like all the social media people are not owning jets, owning yachts, owning all this stuff. And I think a lot of kids are like, oh, wow. A lot of these people are like literally paycheck to paycheck. Because of course they make money, but they spend a lot.
Definitely.
So like, I think the smart ones know how to maximize the set pieces.
No, I totally agree. And I think this is like one of the big challenges of being an influencer. And at least what I'm doing, the way I think about it is, well, there's two things. One is I've very carefully crafted an audience in tech. Because one, I've been in tech, but also two, like the people that I want to meet are in tech.
Yeah.
And I know that if I create content for someone that I want to meet down the line, whether that's someone working in big tech, whether that's a VC, whether that's a super smart founder, I want to create content that they're likely to have seen, which allows me to start a conversation with them. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I've been so focused in tech. And I also love tech. I think it's such an interesting industry. And I think obviously we're living in a world where tech is a huge part of what's happening.
I mean, it worked to get us to link up, right?
Exactly.
Like I saw your comment, like, oh, this kid is hilarious. Like, what the fuck is this?
Exactly. It started the conversation. And more so and that goes back to your point of that, like, there's a lot of routes I could take to get to where I am today, to try to meet the people I meet. Like, I feel like content is one route that people aren't exploring enough. Yeah. And like leveraging the fact that you have an algorithm that allows you to reach millions of people that could potentially be people you want to do business with down the line. That's one point. The other
I almost want to double click on that, because I feel like people think it's clownish. Our hypothesis is that, no, this is like genius, right? And it will all depend on our execution.
Totally.
Right? Because there's so many buttoned up people who are not in front of the camera grinding. They think they're doing the right approach in terms of climbing the ladder. But my sense is like similar to yours, which is that we're all consuming social media content to some extent. Like I'm seeing everyone else's propaganda.
Yeah.
Might as well create our own and push out some content and get some leverage there.
I totally agree. I think, look, the European kid was the biggest clown starting off.
Yeah.
Like, who is this like crazy rich French European kid? Like, but you're not a clown anymore when you built a brand where like, I have the hat here, but I was at the Formula One in Montreal. AWS sponsored me to go out, and I did a video with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, right, the Ferrari drivers, and they both had seen that count. And so when I did a European kid skit with both of them, but they were like, they both understood the brand that I built, and so that kind of comes what I realized there is like, I was a clown. My brother was a clown because he mainly runs that account. I also do European kid skits here and there, but that account was a clown until the point that the brand got so recognizable that Formula One drivers know the videos and are down to do skits.
Yeah.
Which means that...
And they're engaging with their character.
Exactly. And that's like, that changes the narrative, right? It's no longer like a rich French European kid, like it's just the stupid thing you see online. It's a brand.
Yeah.
People find this funny. People understand this is like people understand it's a skit generally. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because there's tons of ways you could have gotten there. You could have like, I don't know, there's all these different ways you could have gotten there, but it was just smart to use social media. That's
where I'm excited about just how folks like us compete, because when I think about venture capital, right, there's just no way I can compete with Sequoia or Andreessen Horowitz, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't compete with 40, 50 years of legacy.
That's a good point.
But they're too proud, too fancy, too rich to make TikToks and make content and get in front of the 13, 14, 15-year-olds of today.
That's a super good point.
So I think that is the medium shift, right? Like, let them compete on traditional legacy media. We'll take advantage and land grab the mind share of future entrepreneurs, future tech CEOs. That's my academic lens on looking at it.
I love it.
And then it's like every new medium looks kind of like clownish or weird, right? Like when internet first started, it looked probably like very silly.
Yeah.
So to me, this is mind share and brand share grab that folks in our generation are playing towards.
That's a really good point. I'm actually going to use that more in the conversations I have with people, like mind share grab. That's like, I'm going to talk about how the internet, that's a really interesting point. These VC funds, A16Z, Sequoia, all the big ones, they have so much money and they have a brand they've built. And they're too careful now to try to experiment too much with content or doing things that are kind of audacious because they have these LPs that have given them billions of dollars. Then they have to like uphold this brand. And, you know, it makes sense, but it also, you're right, it's a weakness because what happens now when someone like yourself starts creating more content that appeals, you know, to the founders you want to reach, you're reaching those founders in a way that they can't reach because the only content they're putting right now is like super informative, like on brand educational content. And it like reaches a few people, but like they're not truly exploring the depths of how much they could reach, especially with a brand like A16Z. If you start putting out really good content, they could reach like some incredible people through their content. I mean, look at Morning Brew, for example, right? Morning Brew is like super successful media company. They've done an incredible job with their content. If they started a venture capital fund, I feel like they could probably do something really impressive too and like reach interesting founders. But I totally agree with your point on A16Z there.
Content creation is a shitty monetization business in of itself. You make content, you command attention, and the easiest way to monetize is sell ads. And selling ads is always tough.
Yeah.
But I think selling VC dollars is an interesting way to how to best monetize content.
So if you just look by selling VC dollars.
And I think like this is like where I think your audience is very interesting. Even the European kid has a very interesting audience, right? It's probably like upper class, aspirational folks who like want to make it in Wall Street and finance and all that stuff, right? Yeah. These are going to be future high earners. You can taste make.
Yeah.
And the leverage on a VC dollar, right? You're trying to underwrite a 10x return on that dollar, and you get management fees and carry and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to sell an advertising slot for $100 or $1,000, use that platform to drive differentiation for a venture capital fund. And the VC model, right? There's a reason why the successful VCs are super rich.
Yeah.
It's a good business model.
Totally.
Or like what is the most efficient media business? Like New York Times is a pretty well run organization, but like for every New York Times or BuzzFeed, it's like going bankrupt or just like burning hundreds of millions of dollars. But like the well run VC funds, right? You turn into a KKR or Blackstone, and these are public companies, just like fee machines.
Yeah, that's true.
So again, you can't compete with Sequoia and Andreessen. Like Mark Andreessen is an LP of ours, and I think they're actually doing pretty good in terms of being elder statesmen and doing content. I mean, they're doing a podcast and whatnot.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not making like TikToks and like kind of being.
Yeah, they're not being bold, I think.
Yeah.
But they're doing what they should be doing in terms of like they're putting out some content.
Yeah. And so when I think about venture capital, especially a new fund like Anti-Fund, it's a startup in of itself, right? So every single startup, you have a wedge to compete, right? So if you're like Duolingo, like you were the first like language chat app, I'm sure probably are being disrupted by ChatGPT. So they're probably like figuring out, okay, how do we incorporate like linking people from different countries to like, okay, we probably need an AI version. I'm sure there's smart people thinking about it. But anyways, there's probably like a new version of Duolingo that's like completely AI driven, cheaper, whatever, competing, trying to disrupt even Duolingo, which I think went public and I think was a good returner.
Yeah.
But the same thing happens with venture capital. I remember when A16Z first launched. I mean, I was just coming up in my startup career, probably a few years older than you. And I think they were positioned very, very founder friendly. At the time, like Founders Fund was, named after being kind of founder friendly. I think A16Z was even more just like pro founder, right? And Sequoia at the time, right? Like they hired Eric Schmidt to be the CEO of Google, right? Like they were known to be the guys placing CEOs, replacing founders, right? Like Benchmark, same thing. So I think Founders Fund and A16Z, which is like a stalwart industry now. I remember when they're coming out, they were like anchored super hard into being super founder friendly. So as I was hinting to in the beginning of the conversation, I feel like if you wanted to be an investor or a VC, the type of humor and engagement that you're already reaching out eclipses most GP founders of like billion-dollar funds. Like your ability to drive attention, let alone competing with some like random VC associates who are like, got the right pedigrees, maybe did 2 years of banking at Goldman Sachs. But just like don't touch reality, like they're in a model.
Totally.
So I think that's where I'm interested in like supporting, being a part of whatever what you're building. It's because I like run similar paths in terms of content is a wedge that is underutilized. Attention is more scarce than capital. And there is just as much creativity, ballsiness, and vision in terms of this route of capturing attention and then monetizing in the proper way as much as any business model of building a SaaS business or an AI business.
Interesting. I have thought a lot about the VC model, and I've thought about like raising a fund at some point. My current strategy right now is I've been doing like small angel checks to start to try to build some track record. I know like LPs, like they look a lot for track record in any fund they're investing in, and then starting to do SPVs. Because here's what I've noticed: a lot of really cracked founders I meet have seen my content at some point. If I really had a larger amount of capital, I would totally invest in them. I meet some super incredible founders that are just like, hey, like. Every founder I meet is like, hey, we would love to get help with content because we don't know how to do it. And so that's, I think, my angle of like being that person that's differentiating from any other VC in the sense that like, hey, you want attention, you want distribution, I can help you with that. And that for them is like, yeah, we'll give you X percentage in our company in exchange for that. So I think there's totally something there to explore.
I think that's the right start. So before I started Anti-Fund, I was angel investing. And I just happened to be, again, like lucky or smart or probably more luck. But my first angel investment was a company called Paribus, which was sold to Capital One. And those guys started a new company called Ramp. So I was also one of the first investors in Ramp. So you're like, oh, okay. Now it's worth what, 7.65 billion? Like, okay, like, so, I don't know, is this a few hundred extra? Like, not bad. So you get a little bit confident there. But I think you're exactly right. Proving that you have access and proving you can write small checks in is important. LPs are, I think, very shy to deploy into new VC managers. Why? Because I think the last generation of VCs fucked it for all of us. Because these guys have fake whatever marks. They're super illiquid. And they're like, what I've learned from LPs or the investors in the VC funds is that you gotta, like, people have a fixed allocation essentially to a liquid private shit, basically. And it's like, okay, you're telling me it's marked super high, but now everyone knows, hey, most of those marks are like fake.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? You can't give me some liquidity back out to redeploy.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of stuck here. So one thing that's resonated really well is that I'm very DPI focused, meaning that as money managers, you're competing with T-bills that pay 5%, super liquid. You're competing with Facebook. You're competing with tech stocks that are public.
Sure.
And I think a lot of VCs don't realize that, like, hey, if you're just a rich dude, if you're a European kid's dad, you're just like, hey, like, I can get 5% risk free. I'm gonna talk to this kid, and they're gonna like get my money stuck for 10 years, and hopefully I get like a 3x.
Yeah.
Does that risk reward make sense for me? So I think just really backward engineering that, hey, this is like a financial investment story, not just like some VC pie in the skies world. Yeah. And that's the world I came from. And I think as I evolved as a business person, it's like, no, just you got to speak the language of Wall Street, because at the end of the day, you're a money manager, you're an asset allocator, you're competing with every other asset allocator. If you can't speak that language and you're just too caught up in like, oh, AI, SaaS, changing the world, idealism, I feel like it's hard to command the respect to deploy large pools of capital. But that said, I think you have to have that idealism, that energy, that change the world. But how do you meld both together? Yeah. Like that's like the magic sauce here. But I think it's like, if I were in your shoes, I would try to index the hottest companies. Because I think when you are an angel, like a 1K, 5K, 10K, 25K checks are relatively doable to jam into consensus hot rounds. And I found it so valuable for a lot of my friends who started VC funds that you essentially have to fight to get access to logos. Like, for example, Catherine Boyle, who's now like an industry legend for American dynamism, right? Like, I remember meeting her when she was like an associate general catalyst. Like, she was not American dynamism superstar, right? She was, I think, like a newspaper journalist pivoting to VC and like figuring out like what her stuff was. I think she got into a couple of defense tech things early in Anduril, and we're very excited, also co-investors with Anduril. And from like that one or two anchor positions, built essentially an entire practice, an entire industry. That's another angle to think about. It's like, okay, I need to pin my hat as an investor onto only 1, 2, 3 narratives that matter any given era of investing. You gotta like choose one and like jam in there and be like the best friend of like one of these 3 macro trends in tech.
Maybe the best thing for me to do is to focus on where are all the big names flocking right now, and just getting that small check in there where there's like big names, and just focusing on building like relationship with those founders. Yeah. It's kind of straightforward, but like I think that actually that's really smart model.
No, exactly. No, I think it's like, I thought about this a decent amount. I think that's exactly right. It's just that you have an advantage over everybody else, that like you have a brand, you have a network, people care. Like if it's just like you're watching and it's just like you're randomly trying to meet people, like it's like, nah, I don't care about your $2,000. The best businesses honestly are pretty simple. It's just like hard to execute and hard to execute consistently. Yeah. Right? It's like we're talking about the Arnault family, right? I don't know, like selling 99% margin Italian and French leather product is like not a crazy business model, right? Like you not understand it. Like, hey, make this shit hella hype, sell it for a really high margin, sponsor a lot of dope parties and celebs, and print and collect a lot of money for you're like as rich as the dude who's sending people to space, making electric cars. Like that to me is like fascinating, right? That the market values clout as much as real industrial change. And I don't have a judgment on it. I'm just like, okay, the market is deciding that Arnault is worth as much as Elon Musk. Yeah. Fascinating. Something to like put in the back of the drawer, like, hey, how do I play this game? I think it's like find that angle, pin your hat on, and I think it's finding consensus winners, putting a little bit of capital behind, build a narrative around it, and build a network around some of those key areas. I think it actually, to your point, it's doable. It's doable. Like you're like, okay, I can do it.
I can think about how to do it right now and like just start building. Like easily build a really strong network of founders that are getting those checks from like the big VC funds. and then just like my value prop and like being like, yeah, I'll like literally help you create viral content. Let me put 20K.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's like if you're need some additional capital, like we'd be happy to like chop up syndicate some deals together, right? Like it'd be very very easy, very very fun. And I think it's like, to me, it's like if Anti-Fund wouldn't support like this strategy, I'm indexing on like basically my approach as being an insurgent venture capital fund. So like very happy like off camera to like I'm down. Like let's just fire on some stuff.
Like there's no reason why I can't literally knock on the door of a startup founder or get introduced to someone that has raised, I don't know, a big Series A from like some top companies and is like especially consumer focused, and is like, this influencer wants to get in on a round. Like, why not?
Yeah.
So
you bring money, right?
Yeah.
Like you bring money, do a unique value add. It's not a crazy big check.
definitely.
Right, it's like a very like if I'm on the other side, if I'm a founder, I'm on the board. I'm like, dude, I get Jason, like he's gonna help promote, get some content, get some awareness out there, right? Like I could spend $50,000 in a day on Facebook ads. That's the math that these companies are running at. It's like, okay, you're spending millions of dollars a month on awareness anyways.
Ridiculous, yeah.
And it's just like, well, people like yourself, people like me, people like Jake, like, okay, like we fucking know how to do this way more efficiently. You guys are stupid if you don't work with influencers.
I think consumer startups like kind of like face the market, and they're just like, we actually really do need any help we can get with distribution. But I think one of the benefits of the MyTechCEO account, and it's still very much in its early stages. Like it's not.
How long have you been like? It's been, like less
basically a year. Yeah, basically a year. Like I've been posting like fairly consistently for about a year.
Okay, we basically started our content journey about the same time. So
Yeah,
we started vlogging like for about just under a year. Yeah,
it's awesome. I started, and like honestly, it's been like part time. Like I haven't even done this thing. I haven't even done it full time because I have a lot of other things I'm working on the sides as well. But definitely want to keep. I think content is such a consistency game, and it's like long term. You're going to build such a big audience if you're very consistently posting, and obviously being really smart about what you're posting. But one of the things I'm really excited about for the MyTechCEO account, and also talking about the strategy, is a lot of the sponsorships that I get right now, AWS, also like some AI tools, they're mostly focused on targeting founders and business owners. And a lot of founders follow my stuff. So I'm thinking especially like targeting companies that are more founder focused, more business owner focused. Yeah. That B2B market is really hard to tap into.
Yes.
It's another big reason I'm trying to build more of my audience on LinkedIn. I think it's another great platform. I mean, all these platforms are easy to reach these people. But B2B.
Yeah, I have a B2B company called Archive. We do social listening for consumer brands, right? And the ACVs are high, right? Mm-hmm. So like, meaning average, the contracts for B2Bs are 10, 100K.
Yeah.
Right? So like instead of selling like a cup of coffee for $5, like I'm trying to sell like 100K things. If you actually have a proper SaaS business, it's 90% margin. So like, okay, $90,000 like gross profit coming through. If you're a company, you're like, I'm down to pay 10, 20, 30, 50, like basically up to some like minimum threshold of margin.
Yeah. These are high ticket items.
B2B influencing is probably one of the most lucrative models. I mean, I think a lot of these, I would say business gurus are essentially B2B product sellers. And all the big popular TikTokers on business, right? They're essentially, they're selling information products of courses of how to be rich. Right, and it's like, and it's pure margin,
and that's more B2B.
And they're selling it essentially to other people that want to be rich. So it's like it's kind of like B2B. But it's like consumer B, right? Like no real businesses are like buying like a course from like some random dude, right? But I think it's like, I think that's the lowest version of B2B influencing. But I think proper B2B influencing, I mean, if you get one incremental AWS customer.
Yeah, that's huge.
I mean, I don't know, you're paying like $1 million a year on just compute.
Yeah,
like
AWS is expensive, like
right? Like, so like if MyTechCEO drove one incremental startup customer, and that startup actually ends up doing well, like you gave them a multi-million-dollar contract.
True.
Right? And you think about like, why does AWS give away like 6-figure credits to all these startups? Well, it's like, well, one, it's like super low margin for them. They just have they have these clusters anyways, and then two, you actually hit. I mean, you're paying tens, hundreds of millions of dollars a year to these guys. Like, you can't rip out your software infrastructure.
No, it's actually a really interesting point, especially like those really like high value people meeting each other and like facilitating those deals and helping facilitate those deals. Like that's huge, especially for big companies, like big tech companies that rely on meeting, these people. There's one of the things I'm working on as well on the side. It's more of it's a project I'm tackling on the side. Is I started a dinner series called Dunbar. And basically the idea, Dunbar is named after like Dunbar's number.
Yep.
Of like the total number of relationships you can have until you start to like forget people, which is 150. And the idea is I use the fact that I know a lot of creators to bring together small intimate dinners, about 12 people, 8 to 12 people, where there's creators, investors, and founders, people that fall into those categories that don't usually meet each other. So like really smart founders who've built, over $1 billion plus valuation companies. They don't understand content enough, so they get to meet creators, and then investors want to be, I guess, both creators and founders as well. So started this dinner series, actually something I did in collaboration with the Solana Foundation. They're one of the main sponsors of the dinner series. And my whole focus is on like bringing together this network of like really high value people and getting them to meet each other, because I feel like magic happens when you have these 3 people meet each other and get to benefit from, knowing one another. That's also one of the reasons why I feel like my network of founders is really good, because I always go to them with a proposition of, hey, I'm a founder, so I know your world, but I also know the content world.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of interesting insights to give you, and then they have interesting insights about business and about product that they provide me. So there's a really good value exchange.
Yeah, no, you're adding a lot of value to the ecosystem, right? Like you're one, at very least entertaining, 2, educating them, and hey, you're putting on free dinners for people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's just like great, but like no, I like the puzzle pieces, right? Like I think about dinners and in-person events a lot as well. Like we're just going to bifurcate in value, right? Like so many people are just going to be entertained on their phone, but there's going to be a premium for great in-person experiences. Like F1 is like a weird event, but people love it. And it's like, why? It's like, people just want to be amongst a giant crowd, see cars, like do some activities.
Yeah.
We're like primal mammals running around. You just want to be entertained with like physical stuff.
F1, I didn't even know that much about F1 before I was going to the race.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is an interesting sport. I've gone to love it more after that race. But yeah, at the end of the day, it also is a lot of a more of a social thing that you meet other people, especially if you're in the paddock. You like meet other interesting people.
Yeah, it's like you get some nice food and beverage. But I think those physical experiences being there, it shows again the power of that culture. So I only mean in the highest respect. Like I don't really understand the sport, but I respect the power of how much physical and mental attention it captures and drives. It's powerful, right? I think it's rare to be able to just like treat some of these superstars as normal people. Like I think I've been lucky to just see these people as normal people. Sounds like you have as well. And it's just heart of heart, maybe they have a character, but they're just like a dude.
I totally agree. Yeah, these guys are regular people. They're idealized, and I can see how that's the case. But yeah, it's just funny. I guess this applies for everyone, even like any other
everyone. You extrapolate to everybody. Any billionaire, any business super legend. It's just like they're just people.
Exactly. Like they're just people. And like people will see them in a certain perception, but like there's like always that human connection when you meet someone. Like this guy, like is a human. Like he's like us. He has like feelings, etc.
Yeah, but on the flip side, I think when there are like 100,000 people cheering for you, you become like demigod. I also like respect like the difference of the nature of like that power, where it's like they are people, but once they're in their element, like they've acquired attributes that are superhuman. And I think it's like an interesting dichotomy to like just realize, navigate, figure out how to like deal with. If you're like a presidential candidate, like you're Trump or Harris, and you're just like 50,000 people are cheering for you.
Yeah.
You have a quality that's different from a normal person.
Definitely.
So you are a normal person, but there are times where it's like, okay, like there is some respect there. Or like, and I think to me it's like, okay, how do I better understand that, collaborate with it, utilize it, exploit it, for whatever direction you want to take it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Everyone has that like innate talent that got them there.
So that's that. Always a blast to hang with your favorite internet meme characters. Jason, MyTechCEO, European kid, is a hoot. Go follow his channels. Please subscribe. Please like. Appreciate all your support. Let's keep at it. See you guys soon.